I'll tell you something strange this morning that I don't normally get. At this time, we get what we call in the trade expectation management. So the people in Labour going, oh, it's not going very well, we could lose badly. I'm not getting that this morning. I'm getting from senior people in government and in the party are suggesting that they seriously think that they could win this.
This week is a big week for politics, and the only man to talk to when there's a big week in politics is, of course, Steve Swinford, the Times political editor. Morning, Steve.
Good morning.
So there's an awful lot to come this week. Is the Andrews scandal, does that have any more political legs? I hear the Lib Dems are sort of snuffling around wanting to do something more with it.
It definitely does, but it's very hard, the politics of it. So let me just explain. One of the fabulous, antiquated things about Parliament, not fabulous if you're a Republican, but Erskine May, which is the Bible of parliamentary rules, is explicit that you cannot impugn effectively the conduct of the sovereign or the royal family in the Commons. And that actually means that, okay, the biggest story in town is obviously Andrew on about 5 different fronts, but MPs are going to be really struggling to talk about or debate it because the rules suggest they can't. Now, obviously they're going to do that anyway, but if you are the Speaker, Lindsay Hoyle, this week, you've got one hell of a job to keep members in line. And once again, it is a tiny example, but of clearly the repercussions of the Andrew scandal and the broader story, because that rule is clearly not fit for purpose.
Well, no,
MPs should, of course, be able to debate and discuss pertinent issues relating to the Epstein files and Andrew. That's what they're there for, but they can't as the rules currently stand.
And that possibly points to a problem within the British establishment that will have allowed poor behaviour. We don't know, and Andrew denies everything, and we're not saying he is guilty of things, but he's clearly been guilty of poor behaviour over the course of his time as a senior member of the royal family. That might be part of the problem, Steve, that actually the system of accountability doesn't work.
Yeah, and it is perverse, because what it means is you can have a rich and lively debate on Times Radio, as we should, about Andrew's role and potential wrongdoing. But in the Commons, the heart of democracy, they can't do that, which is utterly bizarre situation. But people are going to try anyway, I imagine. The Lib Dems have got some kind of urgent question they're putting down tomorrow, so we will be hearing something. But this scandal will change all of that, I imagine, that people will need and feel the need to debate it. And MPs will feel empowered to do so. So it is a tiny example of just how far-reaching this scandal is and how it could change the relationship between Parliament and the royal family.
Yeah, it's a really interesting point there. Our morning starter, or one of the stories we started with this morning, Steve, was about the government and its special educational needs reforms. I think it's fair to say the government are coming at this genuinely. They want to improve a system that's on its knees. But one of our listeners made a point to us, which I think is a fair challenge to the government, Steve. I'll see what you think about this. It's a classic Labour response. There's a problem with a system that costs too much money. Their solution might be to spend more money on it.
There is not clear at this stage where the savings are going to come from. The nub of the controversy to me, having looked at it, seems to be what happens at secondary schools. So they are talking about, I think, reviewing existing EHCPs at that point when kids go to secondary school. And that is actually a pivotal point in a lot of kids with special needs lives, because they can kind of get by in a primary school environment, but where they get lost is in a secondary school environment in the bigger schools. And that is potentially controversial. But at the moment, the government isn't really saying where the savings are going to come from. They've got a big blazing announcement on 4.5 billion of additional spending today, and then there is controversy here. People like Angela Rayner are going to be watching this very closely. She's got one of her children had profound special needs, so she clearly has an interest in that, and others in the chamber will. But I think the government is trying to do everything it can to avoid the controversy. I think there's a broader question of what is the right setting for kids with special needs. So the government's view is clearly it's all about mainstream education and about inclusion, and that enables them to make an inclusive argument that you can't leave kids out. But for some kids that clearly isn't going to be the right setting. So it's, can the government get the right balance between the kids with profound special needs that do need a specialised setting and those with arguably less severe special needs who could benefit and could work in a mainstream education? It's difficult.
Yeah, you've got Keir Starmer writing in the paper today about his brother struggle with special needs and getting a place in education as an inspiration for him. Well worth a read if people subscribe to the Times. Keir Starmer's got a big week ahead, Steve. We're quite gloomy generally about everything. But could I posit, it must be possible this could end up being a great week for Keir Starmer. Over the weekend there was good economic news. If they manage to win this by-election with everyone telling them they're not going to, see off the Greens and Reform, it could end up being a very strengthening week for Keir Starmer. I presume the contrary is also true if it goes the other way.
Yeah, exactly. So this is a huge week politically for him, one way or another. And the Gorton and Denton by-election, which we get the result on Thursday, will be pivotal on that. I'll tell you something strange this morning that I don't normally get. At this time, we get what we call in the trade expectation management. So the people in Labour going, oh, it's not going very well. We could lose badly. I'm not getting that this morning. I'm getting from senior people in government and in the party are suggesting that they seriously think that they could win this, and they think that the split, what they're calling the split, which is where do the don't knows go, so i.e. this vote that may be opposed to Reform MP winning or kind of winning this contest, will they go to Labour or will they go to the Greens? And they think that split is going in their favour. That's what they hope. Now, that is unusual, because if expectation management dictates that you kind of play on the downside rather than telling me at this stage of the week we think we're going to win it and we're in with a good shot on it. Also, the big question this week, will Keir Starmer go to campaign in Gorton and Denton? I can't get an answer on that this morning, which leads me to suggest that he rather might. The thinking before was that he was so electorally toxic and so unpopular that you wouldn't see him on the ground in Gorton and Denton, but I think there is a distinct possibility we could. So it is obviously a huge week for Keir Starmer politically, and then we kind of run into the spring forecast next week, which is, it used to be a fully fledged budget, it isn't anymore. Again, a big moment when the official forecaster marks the government's homework and says this is where the economy is going, how bad is it, how good is it. It's where we end up. So yeah, it's a big few days coming up.
Yeah, you'll be a busy man, Steve. Keep at it.
Thank you. Cheers,
Steve Swinford there. He's the Times political editor.